They told you the tracks were abandoned, that no trains passed there anymore, that the asylum at the end of the line had been sealed, erased, forgotten. But forgotten places don't rot in silence. They wait. The rails still hum at night, a low, metallic whisper that feels like a thought you didn't choose. People who walk that path swear the air gets heavier with every step, as if the world itself is leaning in to listen. Some turn back, some don't. And the ones who don't return changed. If you've ever felt drawn to places you shouldn't go, if curiosity has ever felt stronger than fear, then you already know how this begins. The tracks cut through the forest like a surgical scar, too straight, too deliberate. Rust flaked from the rails in orange scabs, crunching underfoot with a sound that reminded me of teeth. I had come alone, at dusk, because the internet said the place was empty. Because strangers online always say that. Because I wanted to prove something to myself I couldn't name. Every few meters a metal post rose from the ground, stamped with numbers that no longer meant anything. I tried counting my steps between them just to keep my mind busy. 1, 2, 3... I lost count quickly. The woods pressed in, branches knitting overhead, turning the sky into a narrow wound of dying light. The air smelled of wet iron and old leaves, and beneath that, something sweeter, wronger. Like medicine gone bad. I told myself the humming was the wind. I told myself the vibration in the rails came from distant traffic. But when I placed my palm on the steel, the tremor answered me, steady, patient, alive. It felt less like movement and more like breathing. A sign leaned crooked beside the track, half swallowed by ivy. State Hospital was still legible. Below it, the rest had been scratched out, as if someone had tried to erase the name with a knife. I imagined hands working at it in the dark, frantic, convinced that removing the letters might remove the place. I kept walking. The first sound that didn't belong to the forest was laughter, thin, brittle, and too slow. It came from ahead, then behind, then everywhere at once. I stopped, heart hammering, and the laughter stopped with me. Silence snapped shut so hard my ears rang. In that quiet, I noticed something else. Footprints in the dirt between the rails, bare feet, dozens of them, all pointed forward. I followed them because I couldn't imagine doing anything else. As the tracks dipped into a shallow cutting, the ground sloped down and the trees thinned. Through the fog, the asylum emerged, an enormous shape crouched at the end of the line, windows dark, walls streaked like they'd been crying for decades. The building felt closer than it should have been, as if the distance had folded in on itself while I wasn't looking. The humming grew louder, not in my ears, in my chest. With every step, a thought tried to surface, slippery and unfinished. You've been here before. I reached the final post. There were no more numbers, only a mirror bolted to the steel, cracked down the middle, and in it someone stood behind me, smiling with my mouth. I spun around, expecting breath on my neck, a hand on my shoulder, anything solid. There was nothing. Just fog rolling low along the tracks, swallowing my ankles, damp and cold like fingers testing a pulse. When I looked back at the mirror, it reflected only my own face again. Pale, too calm, smiling. I don't remember deciding to enter the asylum. One moment, I was staring at the building, measuring broken windows like missing teeth. The next, I was at the door, my hand already on the handle, flakes of green paint coming off on my skin like dried algae. The metal was warm, that was wrong. Night air should have made it cold. Inside, the smell hit me first. Not rot, something cleaner, sharper. Disinfectant layered over decay as if the place had been scrubbed endlessly and still couldn't forget what it was. The corridor stretched longer than the building. Looked from outside, lights flickering in a slow, deliberate rhythm. On, off, Each pulse landed in time with my heartbeat until I couldn't tell which one was leading. The walls were lined with doors, all closed. each marked with a number painted over so many times, it bled through in ghosts of older digits. I walked past them slowly, afraid that if I hurried, something would notice. My footsteps echoed twice, once where they should have, and once a fraction of a second later, closer, like someone trying to keep up. Halfway down the hall, I heard my name. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't whispered. It was spoken normally, patiently, the way someone calls you when they know you're pretending not to hear. The sound came from a door on my left. Its paint cracked in a spiderweb around the handle. The number on it had been scraped away completely. I put my ear to the door, breathing, not panicked, not labored, calm, content, as if whoever was inside had found the most comfortable sleep imaginable. I reached for the handle before I could talk myself out of it, and the door opened easily, as if it had never been locked. The room was empty. No bed, no restraints, no furniture at all. Just a chair in the center, facing the corner, and on the wall above it, dozens of tally marks carved deep into the plaster. They weren't grouped neatly. Some were crossed out. Some were scratched through violently, over and over, until the wall beneath showed raw brick. On the seat of the chair lay a notebook. The first page was blank. The second contained a single sentence, written in a familiar hand. If you're reading this, it means you didn't listen. I flipped pages faster, my pulse climbing with each one. The entries weren't dated, but they were sequential, thoughts unraveling in real time. At first, the writer questioned the place, the sounds, the sense of being watched. Then the tone changed. Acceptance crept in, gratitude, relief. Near the end, the writing became frantic. Again, the tracks don't lead here, one line read. They loop. I laughed out loud, sharp, brittle, because the idea felt absurd. Buildings don't move, places don't hunt. But as the sound left my mouth, it came back to me distorted, stretched, as if the room were too big for it. The lights flickered hard, plunging the corridor into darkness. And for a moment, I saw something in the corner of the room. A second chair, occupied. When the lights returned, the chair was gone. So was the notebook. From somewhere deep within the asylum, a bell rang, clear, bright, unmistakably cheerful. Visiting hours were over. The bell kept ringing long after the sound should have faded, echoing through the halls with impossible persistence. Each chime arrived slightly out of sync, like multiple versions of the same moment failing to agree. I stood frozen, waiting for it to stop, convinced that moving before it did would be a mistake I couldn't undo. When silence finally returned, it felt artificial, placed, there deliberately like a lid snapping shut. The corridor had changed. The doors were no longer uniform. Some sagged on broken hinges. Others were newer, cleaner, their paint unchipped, their handles polished to a dull shine. I passed a window and stopped short. Instead of darkness outside, I saw the tracks, the same rails, the same fog, from an angle that made no sense. I was too high up for that view. The building should have blocked it. I leaned closer. In the glass, my reflection lagged, behind my movement by a heartbeat. When I raised my hand, it hesitated. When I frowned, it smiled. I backed away, and the reflection followed. Still smiling, still patient. Footsteps echoed ahead, not approaching, receding. A slow shuffle, heel dragging slightly, like someone who had forgotten the proper way to walk. I followed because the alternative, standing still with that window behind me, felt worse. The hallway curved gently, though I could have sworn it was straight before. The lights now stayed on, casting a flat, clinical glow that left no room for shadows. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. I reached a common room filled with rows of chairs bolted to the floor, all facing a blank wall. Every seat was occupied. They sat perfectly still. Men and women of different ages, dressed in hospital gowns that hung loosely from bodies worn thin. Some stared at the wall, some stared at nothing. A few turned their heads slowly as I entered, eyes glassy, unfocused, except when they landed on me. Then, briefly, clarity flickered. Recognition. One of them stood. He moved with effort, joints creaking audibly, and I realized with a jolt that his bare feet were stained orange with rust. He took a step toward me and stopped, studying my face with professional interest. "You're early," he said. His voice was gentle, kind, the kind of voice that makes you trust it without thinking. "We were expecting you later." "I don't belong here," I replied, and the room seemed to inhale as on. A dozen heads tilted at the same angle, like birds listening for something underground. "No one ever does," he said. "At first." He gestured toward an empty chair near the back. I hadn't noticed it before. I was sure it hadn't been empty a second ago. The seat was warm when my fingers brushed it, as if someone had just stood up. A faint indentation remained in the cushion, slowly rising, erasing evidence. "What is this place?" I asked. The man smiled, and several others joined him, their expressions soft, relieved, almost grateful. "It's where the tracks end," he said, "or begin. Depends on how long you've been walking." I tried to leave. I really did. But when I turned toward the door, the room stretched. The exit receded, pulling away from me like a horizon that knows you're chasing it. Panic tightened my chest. I looked back at the chairs, at the faces watching me with something that looked disturbingly like hope. "You can still go," the man said. "Most don't. Once they understand." "Understand what?" "That the world outside is louder," he replied. "Sharper. It hurts more. Here, the rails carry the weight for you." A low vibration rolled through the floor, through the bolted chairs, through my bones. The same humming, stronger now, familiar, comforting in a way that scared me more than fear ever had. On the wall behind them, letters began to appear, etched slowly into the paint, as if by an invisible hand. "Wait for the train." The people settled deeper into their seats, eyes closing, breathing, synchronizing. I felt the pull then, not physical but mental, an invitation to sit, to rest, to stop deciding. Somewhere far away, metal screamed against metal. A train was coming, and a part of me was relieved. The sound of the train never arrived all at once. It leaked into the building in fragments, first a distant pressure, then a vibration so low it felt imagined. The people in the chairs swayed gently, as if rocked by an unseen current. I realized with horror that they weren't waiting for the train. They were listening to it. The man who had spoken to me closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. "There," he murmured. "Do you hear how even it is? No sudden turns, no choices." "I don't want this," I said, but my voice came out softer than I intended, drained of conviction. The word "want" felt fragile here, like it didn't belong. He opened his eyes again, and for a second I saw something old behind them, panic buried so deep it had fossilized. "Neither did I," he said. "That passes." The letters on the wall deepened, grooves cutting into the surface until flakes of paint fell like snow. "Wait for the train." Below it, another line began to appear, slower, more deliberate. "It knows where to stop." The floor shuddered. A crack split the tiles beneath my feet, running straight toward the wall like a fault line. Through it, I saw darkness and movement. Not shapes, not bodies, lines, endless parallel lines sliding past one another, converging and separating, like thoughts repeating themselves until they lost meaning. I staggered back and bumped into someone, warm, solid. Hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me. I turned, expecting another patient. It was me, not a reflection, not a trick of glass or shadow. A second version of myself stood there, eyes clear, posture relaxed, wearing clothes I remembered owning years ago. clothes from a time when my thoughts hadn't felt so heavy. "You made it," they said, I said, with a smile that carried genuine relief. "I was worried you'd turn back. This isn't real," I whispered. They shrugged. "Neither is most of what hurts you." Behind them, a door I hadn't seen before stood open, light spilling out, soft, diffused, painless. I felt an ache in my chest at the sight of it, like homesickness for a place I couldn't name. "That's not the exit," I said. "No," my other self agreed. "It's the loop." Memories surfaced uninvited, sleepless nights, thoughts circling the same failures, the same fears, again and again, wearing grooves in my mind just like the tracks outside. I understood then what the notebook meant. The tracks didn't lead to the asylum. They led through it, over and over, each visit shaving off a little more resistance, a little more will. The train roared now, deafening, though nothing moved. The people in the chairs smiled openly, blissfully, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from them. One by one, they stood, not to run, but to step into that open door, disappearing. Into the light with sighs of relief. My double stepped aside, gesturing for me to follow. "You don't have to think anymore," they said gently. "I can do that for you." For a moment, a terrible, tempting moment, I almost agreed. Then I remembered the mirror on the tracks, the crack down the middle, the way the smile hadn't matched my eyes. I pushed past them and ran. The building fought me, corridors twisted, doors slammed. The humming rose to a scream inside my skull. I burst through an exit that shouldn't have existed and stumbled into cold night air, collapsing onto gravel and weeds. The tracks stretched out before me, silent and still. No asylum behind me, no forest around me, just rails vanishing into fog in both directions. I laughed, breathless, hysterical, because at least I was moving again. Then I noticed the footprints ahead of me, bare feet, pointing forward, and behind me in the distance a bell rang, bright, cheerful, and patient. I walked because stopping felt worse than exhaustion. The fog pressed close, muffling the world into a narrow tunnel of thought. Every step sent a small, sharp pain up my legs, a reminder that I still had a body, still occupied space. I clung to that fact like a rule that couldn't be broken. The footprints never changed. Same size, same spacing, same careless confidence. Whoever had made them wasn't tired. Whoever they belonged to had learned something I hadn't. After a while, minutes, hours, days, time had lost its edges. The humming returned, softer this time, almost kind. It slid into my thoughts the way a familiar melody does, the kind you don't remember learning but somehow know by heart. My pace slowed without permission. The rails glinted faintly, polished by use that shouldn't have existed. I told myself I would stop at the next marker. A metal post emerged from the fog. Stamped into it was a number. 1. My stomach dropped. I turned around, heart racing, and saw another post behind me, barely visible. Between them, the tracks were pristine, newer than the rest, waiting. The forest seeped back into existence at the edges of my vision, trees reassembling themselves like a set rebuilt for another performance. Ahead, the silhouette of the asylum formed again, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The same crouched shape, the same dark windows, the same sense of recognition tightening my throat. "No," I said aloud, the word thin and unconvincing. A voice answered from beside me. "It's all right. This part feels familiar for everyone." The man from the common room walked at my side as if he'd always been there. His feet were bare now, soles stained orange. He didn't look at the building. He watched me. "You ran," he said, not accusing, almost impressed. "That usually buys people one extra loop." "How many have you had?" I asked. He considered this. Enough that the beginning feels like mercy. We stopped before the mirror bolted to the final post. The crack down the center had widened. My reflection wavered, unstable, splitting and rejoining, expressions flickering too fast to track. Fear, relief, boredom, longing. "You don't have to go in again," he said softly. "You can keep walking. The tracks allow that." "Where do they lead?" He smiled. "Back to the choice." Behind us, the bell rang once. In the mirror, my reflection lifted its hand. And this time, I lifted mine too. For a terrifying instant, we were perfectly synchronized. No delay, no resistance. The humming swelled, warm and approving. I felt how easy it would be to let go, to sit, to wait, to let something else carry the weight of thinking. Then I did the only thing left. I closed my eyes and stepped off the tracks. The ground vanished. I fell, not down, but away, into darkness that had no depth, no direction. The humming shattered into noise, then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on cold concrete beneath an open sky, dawn bleeding weak light into the clouds. The tracks were gone. So was the asylum. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification. A message from an unknown number. "You left something behind." Attached was a photo, rusty rails disappearing into fog, with fresh footprints, bare feet, facing the camera. I never went back to look for the place, not on a map, not online, not even in conversation. I learned quickly that the tracks don't like being named. The more attention you give them, the louder they become in your head. Subtle at first, like a thought you assume is your own. Sometimes late at night I still hear the humming, not outside, inside, a steady rhythm that promises rest, simplicity, an end to choice. On those nights I check my feet. I make sure they're clean. I remind myself where I am. I stay awake. Because the truth is this: the asylum was never the destination. It was a filter, a place that tested how badly you wanted silence over freedom. The tracks didn't trap people. They selected them. And once you understand that, the real horror settles in. You start noticing how many people are already sitting. If this story unsettled you, good. That means you're still walking. Subscribe, activate notifications, and share this with others who are drawn to stories that crawl under the skin and refuse to leave. The tracks only win when curiosity walks alone. Just remember, not every path that feels calm is safe, and not every place that waits is empty.